Hi, I'm Angie Monco, and I'm a women's divorce coach. And I help women confidently navigate divorce so they can keep their kids out of the middle and preserve the well being of all involved, even the ex. Did you know that a divorce happens every 36 seconds in the United States? 41% of all marriages end in divorce. 60% of all second marriages end in divorce, and 73% of third marriages end in divorce. And the stats just continue to go on up after that. Half of the people that you know are actually children of divorce. If someone gets divorced, their odds go up 20% of getting cancer, heart disease, depression, anxiety, diabetes, or life threatening illness. And this can affect them the rest of their life, also helping them to die prematurely. Now, for kids, children of divorced parents, especially when they're young, when the parents get divorced, have a 25 to 30% greater chance of depression, anxiety, grades declining, taking drugs and alcohol, negative self defeating behaviors, acting out anger problems, not succeeding. The long term emotional and mental effects of a divorce will stay with some children for the rest of their lives for a minimum of like 2 decades. In order for you to really understand why I am so passionate about helping women confidently navigate divorce, I'd like to read to you my story. Yes, and I'm going to read it because I don't want to leave out any pertinent details. Um, Divorce can feel so very terrifying, especially when you're worried about your kids' well being. And I know for me, looking back, that I would have done things so differently had I known better how to stand up for myself and keep my daughter out of the middle of it all. I spent 12 years in a strained relationship with someone who I never thought I'd say goodbye to. We had dreams and goals and we loved each other. As time went on, we grew more and more apart. Having a young daughter, Maddie, 1 year old at the time, with cystic fibrosis added more tension to the relationship. Throughout my marriage, I constantly betrayed myself by not speaking up for what I needed and what I really thought and felt. I allowed friendships to slip away. I left my church. I berated myself with, I'm too fat and ugly. I work too much. Life is hard. What's wrong with me? At the time, I blamed him for how I felt. I realized that I had created a dynamic that was not only unhealthy for myself, but also for my child. I knew if I stayed in the marriage, I wouldn't be modeling behaviors that would allow my daughter to become a confident and self assured woman who had healthy relationships. I didn't want that for her, and I no longer wanted it for myself. I knew there had to be a better way to live life, as well as have healthier relationships. And because I was looking for relief and a way to cope with the pressure and the stress, I made a series of bad decisions that didn't honor my marriage and didn't honor the core of who I knew myself to be. This made me feel terribly guilty and brought up feelings of immense shame and remorse. I was so confused. I didn't want to hurt my husband, but I didn't want to stay in the marriage anymore either. I wanted shared custody of my daughter, but I didn't feel worthy of this since I was the one that wanted divorce. When I finally got the courage to leave, Maddie wasn't quite yet 2 years old, and it was at this point that the real battle began. My husband felt such hurt, betrayal, and grief over my desire to separate that he would not agree to shared custody and would fight for sole custody. And because of my fear, insecurity, lack of courage, and pervasive guilt and shame, I was unable to take a stand for Maddie and me. The divorce proceedings began, and I unfortunately agreed to use only his attorney, ultimately leaving me without representation. I've always been the peacekeeper, and I just wanted everyone to be happy. The final decision was that I had only visitation rights with my daughter, and I paid child support for the next 11 years. Although it was painful, I knew that my husband and I would be better people if we were not married. After I gave Maddie to her dad, I began to question everything. What was wrong with me? What kind of mother would give up her child, with CF no less? My self-esteem tanked, and I could barely look at myself in the mirror. I knew deep down that the decisions that I made during the divorce proceedings didn't accurately reflect the woman I truly was. I began doing deep inner work to determine why I had made these decisions and put my daughter and me in this predicament. Slowly, over time, I began to heal. I began to see how I had betrayed myself in so many ways. The most significant way being how I didn't feel even deserving of splitting custody of Maddie. Despite all of this, Maddie and I remained very close, and I remarried, and I remain happily remarried to this day. When Maddie turned 11 years old, she asked to come live with me, which my new husband and I both really wanted. However, her dad was deeply hurt by her request, and it strained their relationship. He was remarried, by the way, with 2 kids at this time. After working with a mediator who helped me to advocate for Maddie's needs and devise the best plan for helping her to thrive in life, she finally was allowed to move in with me. And it was a wonderful day until it wasn't. Maddie was so overcome with guilt and shame for leaving her dad's family that she developed some unhealthy coping mechanisms. This made matters worse for her physical and her emotional health. She developed CF, cystic fibrosis-induced diabetes, and had an eating disorder on top of this debilitating, cruel disease of cystic fibrosis. She didn't see her worth or that she was lovable. Abandonment issues reigned, which made sense because in her mind, I had left her, and now in her reality, her dad was leaving her too by moving out of state and emotionally abandoning her. She began going into the hospital when she was 15 years old, and over time, her hospital visits increased to around 3 or 4 times per year by the time she was 22 years old. Part of Maddie really wanted to heal herself, and she became the world's youngest healing code practitioner. Yet it wasn't enough. Maddie gave up her struggle with cystic fibrosis on October 26, 2018, and she died at 22 years of age. It's still hard for me to say. I was crushed and heartbroken, as she meant everything to me. I couldn't help but think, if we could go back in time and I had advocated for us, I know in my heart everything would be so much different. And even though we don't control another human being's self-esteem, I really believe that her dad and I could have helped to preserve her feelings of worth if we'd been able to peacefully separate and collaborate instead of putting her in the middle of our divorce battle. Had she had a stronger sense of self, she may not have experienced the emotional trauma that became physical trauma. I can't help but wonder if Maddie might still be here if she had learned to love and accept herself, and thereby take better care of her overall health. Instead, as a child, in the middle of our bitter, blaming love triangle, she told herself stories that she was unlovable, bad, and somehow to blame for it all. I know, however, that the past is over, and I can't redo it. It does me no good to live with a ton of regret or woulda, coulda, shouldas. Yet I do believe that if I'd had the voice and the strength to advocate for a fair and equitable custody arrangement, that Maddie would have learned from my example that her needs matter, that she matters, and that the divorce wasn't her fault. And even though we can't get Maddie back, her dad and I have learned that we can turn our pain into progress. We have forgiven each other. And although It took her death to bring us to this point. It's evolution, it's growth, it's progress. And I'm confident that Maddie would be proud of us. As a collective family, my husband and I were able to spend a few days at my ex's recently, enjoying his company as well as his wife and their 2 sons. I'm proud of the progress that we have all made, although I'm very saddened by the turn of events that got us to this place. What I learned from this is that when you don't have a strong sense of self, you make decisions that affect more than just you, and they have a long-term ripple effect. I wish I would have had someone to guide me through this process in a non-judgmental way and encourage me to stand up for what I believed would be the best for my daughter and me, and even for my ex. What about you? Are you afraid that a divorce will irreparably damage your children? Do you feel too scared or hurt to make decisions confidently? Are you frozen in the fear of the unknown and feel like you can't move forward? I can honestly say that I get it. Deep to my core, I get it. And I'm here to tell you that your story doesn't have to end this way. You can learn how to advocate for yourself so you help yourself, your kids, and even your ex. Since getting divorced, I've been happily remarried to Steve for almost 19 years. I've learned so much about where my insecurities were stemming from at the time and why I made the mistakes that I made. I learned that you cannot stand up for yourself when your self-worth is so incredibly damaged like mine was. And I learned about amazing and simple ways to help correct those unhealthy patterns. Today, I'm here to give you hope that you can learn to stand up for you and your children's needs. Divorce doesn't have to be a scary, traumatic ending. It can be a hopeful beginning of a new chapter if you know how to take care of yourself and your children. So this is why I'm co-hosting the Divorcing Moms Retreat, how to confidently navigate divorce and keep your kids out of the middle. Together with my business partner, Morgan Higdon, who is a child of divorce, we're going to teach you our best advice for learning how to navigate divorce and how to stand up for you and your kids. The Divorcing Moms Retreat will empower you to, 1, feel worthy and confident of asking for your fair share of child custody and assets. 2, let go of the guilt that tells you what you're doing is bad or wrong, and let go of the shame that tells you that you're a failure. And 3, let go of the anger and the resentment that tempts one to put their kids in the middle and harm them. 4, make peace with the situation and create a new vibrant chapter in your life and a new identity of what you're capable of. The Divorcing Moms Retreat will teach you, 1, the various methodologies of the divorce process and which type is right for you. 2, how to find the right legal support, attorney, mediator, guardian ad litem. And 3, how to find the right financial support and understanding your finances. So click the link below to register for this amazing online experience for free. That's right, it's 100% free. Divorce can feel so lonely, and we want you to feel supported and have the resources that I know would have made all the difference for me and Maddie.